Warriors, what's going on? Tuv here. Today is kind of a little bit different of a video. I just wanted to talk on something that's been kind of eating at me for a while now, and there's a lot of people who are kind of touching on it, but as much as I agree with some of them, they kind of just don't quite hit the mark for me. And I was like, you know what, I have a YouTube channel, so I might as well just put the video out and see if anybody relates to it. So the topic for today is Star Wars. We had some huge news that the Acolyte is canceled, and let me just be really clear from the jump. I don't think that any Star Wars property, any show, any movie, hell, any line of toys being canceled or taken off shelves or whatever is good for the brand, for Star Wars. I think the problem is the agendas that end up being pushed. And this isn't even just Star Wars. This goes for Marvel, DC, like Lord of the Rings, Halo. Dude, any big IP you can think of, this does eventually end up becoming a problem. Some, it becomes a problem right off rip, like the Acolyte. But there are other IPs that, you know, not management, but like the higher ups within the company hire this person or hire that person, or they bring on a team, and within those team members there are a bunch of people who have their own agendas, and because they're a part of the creative process, they are able to put their own agenda fueled views into the product. And that's real dangerous, because when you do that, you are changing it. You're because that product that you are just injecting your views into isn't yours. Like, even if you are the president, like Leslie Headland, if you are the not president, but head of Star Wars, if you're in a position like that, you are influencing millions of other people around the world, like whether you want to see it that way or not. That is what's happening. The amount of kids who go out and play with lightsabers in the streets, like, those are the minds that you are molding with the products. Like, yes, with Star Wars, the primary demographic, I think last time I looked, it was males. What is it? Between the ages of, was it 17 or 19 and up to like 35 or something like that. The female audience is abysmal. It just doesn't, it's just not really there. Which is understandable, because Star Wars has always kind of been like a, you know, girls have Barbie, boys have G.I. Joe kind of thing. Like, I don't necessarily think that separation in pop culture, whatever, is a bad thing. I think it's very good, actually, because when you start mixing them and the agendas and ideologies of both men and women combine, I think it muddies up the one thing that you're working on, if that makes sense. Like, you're taking two, like, there's a thing here in the middle, and then you got one side, and they just crash into the main product, and then it just becomes a disorganized mess. And I don't think that works for anything. I don't think it really ever has worked for anything. And then you got things like Deadpool and Wolverine that come out, and they have similar parts that either play into the, like, feminine power and, like, what's the word, the misogynistic blah blah whatever. Like, that movie kind of has all of it. The difference between that and other products is this one doesn't revolve entirely around it. Like, each scene where something could be interpreted that way is so short, and they don't drag it out. Like, a prime example is in, was it Endgame? In Avengers Endgame, there was that one scene that everybody talked about where Peter's like, I don't know how you're gonna get over there, and then was it Wanda lands and says, "Don't worry," dramatic pause, and then Okoye comes up and is like, "She's got help," like, and then all the females in Marvel like drop down and like they go out into this huge like cinematic thing. You didn't need to do that. It would have actually been cooler if Valkyrie flew down on the was it the Pegasus and grabbed Peter off the ground, or like grabbed the gauntlet, and then Captain Marvel is flying away. They kind of did a scene like that in like, it would have been more female empowering or whatever if Valkyrie and Captain Marvel were the ones to swoop in, grab the gauntlet, and just fucking power it through everybody and get it to the thing. That would have been so much cooler than them having to slow the whole scene down for a second there and make this whole dramatic part with all these like strong female characters. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, you don't have to go all out and like break this whole scene down into this it's just pandering, really, outright pandering. It's ridiculous, and it drives me insane because when you say things like this, the other side will come at you and say, "Oh, you're misogynistic, you don't like women, strong women, whatever." I loved Alien. Ripley, crazy strong character. And you know what's crazy? The Assassin's Creed Shadows or whatever game that's coming out is getting a whole bunch of flack because of Yasuke, who is the at this point famous he was the first foreigner to be dubbed a samurai, and he was dubbed samurai by one of the greatest feudal lords in the history of Japan. He was a feudal lord who was active in peace for the time, or like garnering peace. Like, even before the announcement of this Assassin's Creed game, I had an interest in Yasuke. Like, I thought that was just one of the coolest stories ever. And, you know, there had been memes and stuff that, like, floated around the internet over the past, like, 10 years or so, whatever, about him. But I guess the majority of people just thought it was bullshit when it first, like, came out that he was going to be in the game. The other crazy thing is, like, "Oh, you're making this whole game about him." And like, no, they're not. There's two protagonists. And the main one is a female Japanese, like, shinobi. What? You're freaking out over Yasuke being this big, burly black man in a samurai costume. It happened. That was a real thing. And then the other character is a female, like, awesome look. So far, the shots that I've seen of her look way more interesting to me than the shots of the Yasuke. Yasuke is more like the burly, like, slow, defense-driven tank, and she is more like the silent, more Assassin's Creed style. They did kind of the same thing in Assassin's Creed Syndicate, where Jacob Fry was the more, like, burly, out in the streets fighting kind of thing, and Evie was the more assassin-oriented one who, like, went off and did her own thing. Like, I feel like that's probably what they're doing with this. But, like, overall, the idea of, like getting mad at it doesn't really make any sense, because they're doing both. They're feeding both types of fans, but they're also using real things. They're not they do embellish things, obviously, and, like, the magic of, like, the first civilization and all that, like, whatever. Like, the game was never meant to be completely real. You're getting into a computer program and becoming one of your ancestors. Like, that already is some kind of technological witchcraft. Like, from the very first game, there were magical elements to it, and I think it worked. And now, like, a lot of people had problems with, like, the RPG trilogy, the Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla, like, having way more of the deities and magical. Like, do you think they're not tying all of that into everything? Like, so many people play games at face value, and they don't look at the lore. They don't look at what they're going for. They just play it and think, "Oh, this is shitty. Why is this happening?" Like, well, if you paid attention to the story and didn't just start playing Assassin's Creed when Origins came out, you'd probably have a different perspective. Like, when Mirage came out, it got a whole bunch of hype, and then when it came out, I don't know if it did well. I didn't look at the actual numbers, but in terms of visibility online, as soon as it came out, like, nobody was even really talking about it anymore. But that game felt so much like the original Assassin's Creed games with Ezio and Altair. Like, the gameplay mechanics went back to the roots of Assassin's Creed, and I thought that was amazing. I still have to finish the series on my channel because I only have one episode up. But it's so good, and like there's been so many times where I want to download it and just play it by myself, and I'm like, no, I'm doing the series for my channel. I have to take my time, which is a whole other separate thing that's kind of annoying with content creation. But I don't know, like that's just one big example of it happening in the gaming world. And then obviously there's the Star Wars side of it with Leslie Headland and Kathleen Kennedy, and just the nightmare situation that's been going on over there for years at this point. Like, there's a lot of people who want to say that Obi-Wan Kenobi, the show, wasn't very good because they did like a few little things here and there. I thought the show was really good, and the Vader Obi-Wan fight at the end was the ultimate payoff. It showed people that Obi-Wan is like, he can beat Anakin, he can beat Vader, and Terry McGinnis, that's fucking Batman Beyond. Alec Guinness, his Obi-Wan just, and a lot of people who know me know that like I just don't like the original trilogy. I respect them for being like the groundwork of what made Star Wars and like nostalgia and stuff, but to me those movies were extremely corny. The acting was so bad, and it made me laugh when the prequels would get shit for bad acting, and I'm like, I'm sorry, did you just not watch the original trilogy? Like, that one scene that everybody loves where Vader finally says, "I'm your father," and Luke is like, "Ah! Like, it was nonsense and very cringe. Like, I feel like the elitists, the gatekeepers, like all these people just want to hype up the original trilogy so badly, but they're just doing it out of nostalgia's sake, because like they were like, and I'm not saying that they were bad. I'm saying that they were not like, if you're in a conversation with somebody, Jesus. You can't say, oh, well, obviously the original trilogy was best. Like, no. That's not how it works. It wasn't obviously better. I would say, like, and this is coming from, obviously, if I wanted to be biased, I could. But from, if I could put my brain into the unbiased position for a moment, clunk, I would say the original trilogy and the prequels are both equally on the top. Yes, in both, the acting was just not very great. There was more good acting in the prequels than there was in the original trilogy. The original trilogy had a lot of really cool moments. One of my favorite moments in Star Wars history is the scene where Jabba's cruisers are going, like, they're on Tatooine, and they're going towards the Sarlacc pit, and they're on those, like, brown, like the rusty hovercrafts, and like it's that big moment where Lando looks over at Luke, and then R2 shoots the lightsaber up, and Luke flips up and then hangs off the thing, and then like that whole scene, that whole Tatooine scene is one of my favorites in Star Wars history. And I don't think there's a moment in, actually it's a lie, I was gonna say I don't think there's a moment in The Phantom Menace that would compare to that to me, but another one of my favorite scenes in Star Wars history is the scene that is Duel of Fates. It's the scene where Darth Maul kills Qui-Gon, and then Obi-Wan cuts Darth Maul in half. Like, that is like such a good example of good writing. All of those moments from the original trilogy to the prequel trilogy. So like I have to put them both at the top. And the sequel trilogy, I'm pretty sure that's being disregarded, like it's being taken off the table as canon, which is the best decision, because there were so many moments within those three movies that just, not only was it cringe, but it was hard to sit through, because they like in the very small moments where you start to actually like a character, they do something in the next scene that makes it like just ruins it. Like, all of the fight choreography was horrible. I think one of the biggest strong suits of the prequel trilogy was that you got to see so much more of the Force and so much more of the lore and so much more lightsaber battles and good choreography. And then when the sequel trilogy came out, first of all, The Force Awakens or whatever, that one was almost a color copy of like the 3 original trilogy movies. And I think they did that on purpose because they knew they could pull in nostalgic fans with that movie if they made it just like the original trilogy and like changed a few things up here and there and inserted Rey into the story. Like, that's why that movie did well, and I think that's why a lot of people still say it's good. It was ass. The movie was ass. All 3 of them were ass. They had good moments, but the movies are still ass. Like, there's no 2 ways around it. And then, what was it, The Last Jedi, the infamous scene with Snoke in the chamber room? Like, you had the Praetorian guards? Is that what they were? I don't remember. They were the Imperial Guard, Praetorian, whatever, the big fucking dudes in red. Those guys. You had them just standing there. The choreography, like, was so bad. There were moments where they were just standing there while Kylo and Rey were like swinging around with poor choreography themselves. They didn't even have good choreography. They were swinging like someone who doesn't know about Star Wars would be swinging a lightsaber pretending. Like, that's how it felt. And then they built up Snoke as this like crazy, like Sidious level character, even like he was Sidious or whatever, I guess. But like, that doesn't excuse it. Him sitting in that chair, that whole fight scene, like, and then all it takes is just boop, force the lightsaber. And that was the end of it. Like, that was the dumbest shit. Like, they made this character who they were amping up to be this massive. A lot of people thought he was Plagueis at first. That's how, I don't know if you guys remember that, but when the first thing of the gigantic like hologram of him sitting, everyone was like, oh, that's for sure Plagueis. Like, that's gotta be Plagueis. And then you find out in the last one, while Sidious is sitting in his weird like Matrix style throne thing, you find out it was him the whole time. Or I don't even remember if you find out at the end of Last Jedi. That's how much I hate it. Like, I don't even want to look into it, because the more I find out about these products or these movies, the more it doesn't make sense. And the same thing happened with The Acolyte. It's like so many things just didn't make sense. And then if I'm being like 100% real with you, The Acolyte felt like if the CW ended up being legally allowed to make a Star Wars project. The Acolyte is just straight up a CW, like Riverdale, like Supergirl, like Stargirl, like that level, but Star Wars. Right to the acting, to the cinematography, to the choreography, the writing, all of it was very like teenage girl, like maybe like fresh out of high school, trying to identify with things and like find out who she is. That's who wants to watch The Acolyte. Like, why are you doing, like, you need to play to your primary demographic. It's not even smart, not even just smart from a business perspective, but it's smart in longevity. You've been doing this for so long. Why all of a sudden now are you going to switch up the formula and start making something for people who really aren't even honestly interested in joining the Star Wars realm? Like, they have their own things that they like watching. You don't need to pull them into this. Like, it's okay to pander to your demographic. That's what works. And when you do it well, you get so much praise from the fans, and that's what you want. That's what you should be going for. Like, I don't know why they're not doing that. Your fans are Star Wars fans. Why are you making this, like, teenager reality show with lightsabers and characters that don't make sense and lies and, like, incorrect numbers and, like, just butchering, like taking a butcher knife. The fish here on the table is Star Wars, and they just took a butcher knife and we're just creating little slivers in the whole franchise just for this one little show that, even if it did really well, would be forgotten about in like 3 years. It didn't make, everyone's forgot about the Book of Boba Fett, except for the last, like, what, two episodes? The only good thing about that show was the last 3 episodes, because it felt like The Mandalorian, like it was The Mandalorian show again, with just Boba Fett in it. Like, that's unacceptable. Like, the writing of the beginning is supposed to pull you in and make you invested and interested in how it's going to play out. The fact that they brought Mando in and made the last couple episodes pretty much his show again shows that they didn't have a good enough payoff in the end by just using Boba Fett, which is embarrassing, because me, Star Wars Theory, The Critical Drink, like all of these big, like huge fans of Star Wars could have come up with countless ways they could have done that story and had it come out well. So there's really no excuse other than it is them in the writer's room with no information, no knowledge on the product, no knowledge on what they're working towards. Like, it seemed like well, this is how I feel like the board meeting went. It's like the guy kind of like, all right, so how do we appeal to our primary demographic? Let's put some lightsabers in there, and let's see what we can make happen. Let's make sure we do right by Boba Fett and the character and the Bounty Hunters Guild and everything that needs to be there. Make sure it's made. Sorry about that. I had to talk to family for a second. But yeah, like I just. So with that being said, like the guy, I'm assuming the head creative writer would come in and say something along those lines, and then like the table of people start throwing out ideas, this and that, whatever, and then the guy who sat down at the table and came out with all that stuff that they need to focus on just fucking walked out of the room, and the rest of them just mingled amongst themselves, and then boom, that's where we got the Book of Boba Fett. Obi-Wan, I felt was just lazy. Again, up until the last, like the fight with Vader and Obi-Wan, like that whole couple episode long stint there was pretty good. I think that when what's her name? She was such an unmemorable character. I forgot her name. Reva, I think. When she had that moment with Obi-Wan in between the blast doors as they were trying to come in and take everyone. That whole episode I really liked. I thought it was written well. I think the story of Reva works, but I think the way they executed it was very bad. They made people think of her as just a confused, like, completely just not powerful person who... Her whole story just didn't really make sense. Like, if they really wanted to do something... In that moment where they're talking through the blast doors, if she had actually accepted Obi-Wan's help, and then she went exactly where she went, to Tatooine, and she found Luke and stayed there until Obi-Wan was safe and was able to like figure out his side of things with Leia, like, and Reva was in Tatooine, like trying to like hunt for Luke or like do this or that or whatever, until Obi-Wan came back, and then they were able to speak with one another and like make Reva convert back, turn an Inquisitor back to the light side of the Force. Could you imagine if Obi-Wan, who's not even really a Jedi anymore at this point, is still able to have that much of a connection to the Force and to emotion and to speak in such a way that an Inquisitor who goes through so much torture and passion is engraved into their brain to turn them into these soldiers of Vader, if he's able to speak to her and get her brain to wash it away and come back to the light, could you imagine how different the ending of Obi-Wan would have been if they were to do that? And then you would have a character to use in future projects who is now on the light side, who was an Inquisitor. You could have her in a live-action Star Wars Survivor, whatever, with Cal Kestis, because Cal Kestis is canon, so he's going to be in live action at some point. Imagine having Reva, who comes to the light side, finding Cal Kestis, and he's weary of her because she was an Inquisitor, so he's like, I've heard stories about you, kind of thing. And then maybe they find Ahsoka, or like, they can do something huge with that, but instead they gave Reva this like one-dimensional, just bad writing story. It could have been so much different. I know I've been rambling this whole time. I just really hope that there are other people out there besides just people like me and Star Wars Theory, Critical Drinker. I don't know. I'm drawing a blank on the other creators for Star Wars right now, but like, or like Mauler. I don't know. I hope that there are more people who feel the same way that we do, because as we're seeing now, people like us are the ones who are. I mean, theory will say that like we don't have that much power. We're not. We do. Absolutely, we do. Because like not me. I'm not speaking for me. I have a very, very small channel. Like the most influence I have is talking to my buddies about it who aren't as knowledgeable. But like for people like them who have this platform, they absolutely are. YouTubers in general, reaction channels, people who react to music, they are increasing the value of every artist they listen to on their channel, because they have these massive followings. Even people who just happen by the video that you upload, like you are increasing the value of the product you're reacting to. Even if you have a bad reaction, you're still propping them up. That's why when all this stuff with the Acolyte and shit was going on, there was a moment where they were kind of going up again, because so many people were showing disdain and saying negative things. Like, it's still bad press. It's press. You're pumping up the things. And then after a while of it continuing, the press got so bad that the ramifications the company was facing became too much. And like, that's why you have decisions like this, where Leslie Headland is gone now, the Acolyte is gone, they're probably retconning the sequel trilogy. Like, it's a domino effect. And there are moments where people will say that the influence just doesn't matter, but it's just not true. Everything that happens when you are, like, especially for someone like Theory, he probably is saying it to cover his ass, but like for someone like him who has the biggest Star Wars platform basically in the world, his word carries so much weight with fans because he is so knowledgeable on it. Obviously, and he's even said it before, his knowledge on Star Wars is just in the areas that he finds interesting or that he really connects with. He doesn't ever claim to know everything about Star Wars, because he doesn't. There are other people like Mahler and like the crew that he does his podcast and stuff with who are a bit more knowledgeable on more vast parts of Star Wars that maybe Theory isn't. But like the things that Theory is very intelligent on, he's like very intelligent on. And I think that the biggest thing about all of it is that George's vision is firmly planted in his brain, and I think that's the only thing that matters. If you knew George's message, his vision, the way he created movies, that like, and the crazy thing is, Theory hangs out with people who've worked with George very closely. People who have worked very closely with George and also knew George's message and like were a part of the highest moments of Star Wars with George Lucas, if they support you, that's a pretty clear indicator that you are doing something right and that your word holds weight. Because if you are someone who worked on the sequel trilogy and you're talking about this and that or changing this or doing that, the people who surrounded themselves with George and like I said, knew George's message, they wouldn't be hanging out with you. They wouldn't be walking through Central Park with you, discussing things and offering to help you on your projects. Like, I don't know. I think there's a lot of common sense that is disregarded. Like, it should be common sense, what I just said. That should be just clear-cut common sense. Like, yeah, obviously. But then the other side of it is you have people who don't care about George's vision. They don't care about what George, like, it's... And those people I kind of just don't even pay attention to, because those people are typically the ones associated with the people trying to change the IP. They're just trying to change all these things and, like, fluff it up with this or, like, add this character and, like, make this female, like, strong and powerful, whatever, but, like, give her no character development, no writing. Like, I don't know. I probably come across as misogynistic or just a hater or whatever, but it's really the opposite, because like I said at the beginning of the video, all I want is for Star Wars to do well. And I think now that the culling, I guess we're going to call it, has happened, things can start to move in the right direction, and I'm actually, for once in a long time, excited to see the next thing that Star Wars does. Because it's just it's been a long time. It's hard when it's like we're floating around in an aquarium and we get a little tiny little bit here, a little bit here, but like for the most part, it's just flat nothingness on the top of the water. Or like I don't know, that was that was probably a really bad analogy. Put it like the cap to an aquarium, it's down at water level, so the fish can't even like come up. If there's like a bug or something, they can't even like come up to grab it. But then like you remove the cap and just put little pieces of food like spread out here, like there. Those little pieces of food are like the good parts of Boba Fett, the good parts of Obi-Wan. That, and then the cap goes right back on, and we can't breathe anymore. Fish can't breathe. I'm really butchering this, but you know what I'm talking about. That's what it felt like. We were just getting little crumbs here and there, and not even crumbs in the form of a full show. Crumbs of little scenes within those shows. It's not acceptable. It's not cool. I'm gonna end it here though, because I ranted way too much, and I really bounced all over the place, and I apologize for that. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Really helps me out, man. I am a tiny channel. Like it's ridiculous. And please subscribe, because the analytics show me, like, there's so many people who watch my videos but they don't subscribe. It just takes 2 seconds, man. You just hit the little button, boop, and then maybe in a couple weeks there'll be another video that I drop, or you'll see through shorts or something like that, and it'll be something you like. Just be subscribed, man. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed as much as I do, and I'll see you in the next one.